Exhibit 1. The first destination on the 7 deadly seas is the Java Trench. 1,600 miles long, it arcs south from Burma to Sumatra. If you could see 5 miles under the Andaman Sea, you'd see a deep canyon where two of the Earth's tectonic plates come together.
Most people would think the Grand Canyon was one of the greatest trenches on Earth, but actually many of the trenches in the oceans are much deeper and wider than the Grand Canyon would be.
Geological fault lines like this one are where tsunamis are born. Tsunami. Like a monster rising from the depths, the sea itself is suddenly set in motion on a scale that demonstrates how puny humans really are. Because we know so little about the underwater universe, tsunamis often strike without warning. Before December 26, 2004, no one knows or even cares much about the Java Trench. But at 3 o'clock that afternoon, it gets our attention. A sudden jolt from deep within the trench generates a massive submarine earthquake. 9.3 on the Richter scale. It's more powerful than all the quakes anywhere on Earth for the prior 5 years combined. Using an array of underwater microphones placed years earlier, scientists record the sound it creates in the abyss 25,000 feet down.
We recorded at very low frequencies, only up to 125 hertz, so we have to speed up the recording to make it audible to humans. But when you speed it up by 10 times, what it sounds like is basically a very low, eerie rumble.
What you are hearing is the sound of energy being transferred from a shifting sea floor to the earth and sea around it. The power unleashed has been calculated to equal 600 million Hiroshima atom bombs.
And by using that sound, we were able to basically map the whole rupture length and the speed at which it ruptured.
The rupture lasts more than 8 minutes, ripping its way along an 1,100-mile stretch of the Java Trench, about the length of California and Oregon combined.
All unzips all at once. A lot of water suddenly gets pushed up and down. On the side of Sumatra, Malaysia, Thailand, the seafloor moves down. On the other side, the seafloor moves up.
The earthquake pulls the water down 2 feet, then bounces it back up 4 feet. A chain reaction starts. They're called gravity waves, and they spread in all directions. Like ripples in a pond, but on a global scale. The tsunami waves are 300 miles apart from the crest to crest. Scientists at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration have developed a tool to better visualize the global oceans. They have wrapped satellite images around a 3-dimensional sphere.
Red and yellow indicate peaks, and green indicate troughs. The tsunami moves at an incredible rate. It's the fastest physical phenomenon we know, as fast as a commercial jet. The reason it moves so fast is because it's not moving water, it's moving energy.
Just like sports fans doing the wave, the energy is passed from person to person, circling the stadium faster than any human could run. So it is with the tsunami wave.
It's basically the sound traveling through the water, so it's molecules compressing and expanding next to each other. It travels a little less than a mile per second.
One of the places hit worst is 381 miles east of the Java Trench. The spectacular beaches of Thailand. It's the day after Christmas, 2004.
So this is basically where we were staying. It was a series of thatched hutches. It was on a small island called Koh Lanta, south of Phuket on the Andaman Sea. The day of the tsunami was one of the most crystal clear, beautiful days you could imagine.
At about 4:30 in the afternoon, Susan McClure and her 2 daughters are relaxing by the beach. Her husband is offshore on a diving excursion. The tsunami reaches him first.
That thing is whipping across the ocean. But if you were on a ship in the middle of the ocean and one passed by you, you'd hardly see it at all, because the amplitude's not very much at all. It's just a tiny little ripple that goes zipping by you 500 miles an hour.
In deep water, the wave is only about 30 inches high. But this ripple of power extends down to the depths, where divers feel it surge like a riptide.
The current actually lifted them up and brought them back down.
A diver would probably have heard the sound of the earthquake happening, and in addition, they feel the lower frequencies actually pulse your body.
The first wave roars past the divers toward the beach. As it gets into shallower depths, it slows down. That incredible ripple of energy is now concentrated into less space. Water stacks up on top of itself and gets taller, 8, 9 feet and rising. Just in front of this towering wave is an equally oversized trough. The leading edge is what's called a negative or depression wave. It empties the harbor of water.
When you're at the beach, you observe the waves come in and then they go out, and they come in, they go out. Well, the tsunami is just an exaggerated wave of that nature. And this time, instead of a wave coming ashore every 6 seconds, it's coming ashore every 15 minutes.
Home videos from Koh Lanta reveal that people on the beach are mystified. Then they see it. The wave's leading edge approaching from the distance. Almost 15 feet high. What they can't see is that behind that looming wall of water, the entire sea level is elevated. Susan McClure is lounging in a hammock.
I might have seen somebody running. I really can't tell you what happened and why I stood up. But I did, fortunately, and I saw this incredible wave coming. It was so big, and it took a long time to realize what it was. It was the most interesting thing you'd ever seen. You couldn't not look at it. And there was a boat about 300 feet or so from us, and it just smashed it. It was the sound of things popping and breaking, the sound of bamboo, and it just shatters. I kept yelling for my kids. I just kept screaming for them to run, but there's no way they could have even heard me. It was so loud.
The first of the 7 deadly seas, the Andaman Sea. On December 26, 2004, a shock wave ripples up from 5 miles beneath the surface. It grows 130 feet high in some harbors and rushes inland as much as 3 miles, taking with it everything it can.
The force of the water is incredible. The water is 1,000 times heavier than air. So being in a 10-mile-per-hour water current will have approximately the force as being on a 10,000-mile-per-hour wind. You simply cannot stand.
If the tsunami were only made of water, that would be bad enough. Unfortunately, this wave brings sand and rocks up from the underwater universe and hurls them onto the beach. Each mile of shoreline is slammed by 33 million cubic feet of water and debris. It's as if Thailand's western shoreline is hit by a tide of wet cement the size of the Great Wall of China. People who stay to see the wave do not survive. Those who run away are unsure what happened. Fortunately, Susan McClure finds her children, and together they scramble to shelter.
We had no idea what could have possibly caused it, or how long we should wait, or what was the next episode.
Desperate for news of her husband's whereabouts, Susan returns to the beach and finds devastation.
It was an incredible shock to realize that something that had been there just moments ago could be so completely and totally destroyed.
Susan doesn't realize just how dangerous her location is.
It took us all the way down to the south part of the island.
Her vacation bungalow is tucked away in an idyllic bay. But scientists at the University of Southern California's Tsunami Research Center have learned that this is the worst sort of place to be when a tsunami strikes. A model reservoir on top of a shake table shows why.
That will generate some wind waves in the basin. The waves are very, very small, they're ripples. The wind is putting energy only on the surface of the water.
But a tsunami wave is very different from a wind-generated wave. The flat sides of the square tank are like beaches, but the corners are like harbors. They may be protected from wind-driven waves, but they funnel the tsunami inland.
And I will put my finger at where the shoreline was before we started. It was right about here. As you can see here, it's exactly the wrong place to be in the tsunami.
For Susan McClure and her daughters, their ordeal has only just begun.
And then all of a sudden people start screaming again because they feel that another wave is coming. And it was just like one of those horror movies where everybody's running at you and they're all screaming.
Susan and her children run for high ground again. A second wave hits the beach, then a third, at 15-minute intervals.
Each wave actually organizes the debris that it created from the previous wave. So it becomes more like a bulldozer. And then the third wave organizes even more material, and it becomes a better, more effective bulldozer.
Buildings, animals, and people caught in these later waves are literally pounded and ripped to shreds.
It's just like being in a concrete mixer, and you have nails and large pieces of cement, all of it being tumbled around. So there is very little chance of survival.
Dying in a tsunami is a violent activity. You're traumatized by either broken bones or crushed rib cages or just the sheer weight of this.
After 3 agonizing hours, the sun sets on a scene of unparalleled devastation. The most destructive tsunami in modern history.
It's getting dark. There's still no sign of Bill.
Last Susan knew, her husband was on a dive boat offshore. The McClures are among millions of survivors all around the Indian Ocean who are wondering whether their loved ones survived. Victims are spread across 5,000 miles of coastline in 11 countries.
We can see the tsunami continuing to spread out across the planet. Not only was the tsunami so powerful that the waves reached the east and the west coast of the USA, but it also shows us there are not discrete oceans. There is one body of water, one ocean. They're all connected.
I was sitting on my towel with each of my daughters, realizing that this is it. We're gonna be here for the night, and that we might as well try to get as calm as we can. And my husband walks into the light, and I see him standing there looking for us. And I turn around, and 150 people start clapping. They're all got tears running down their eyes, and it was a really wonderful moment to be reunited.
Not all are so lucky. Over 220,000 people die in the tsunami.